Chronic fatigue is such a difficult disorder to pin down, and it's because the symptoms can be so varied, so different from person to person. So, the chances of two people with CFS meeting on the street and both having the same symptoms is rare.
Mm.
And that's why people find it difficult to identify with each other. They're trying to tease apart, well, what's CFS and what's actually the flu or the cold or brain fog because of a certain, whatever food, or am I getting early dementia or whatever it may be. And that's why having a very good relationship with a compassionate doctor who's taking the time with you is really important. So the first thing that we have to sort of like just dispel is that there is no such thing as a standardized list of symptoms that all people with chronic fatigue syndrome have. Partly because this isn't type 2 diabetes where there is a specific metabolic pathway, related pathways which are being affected. We know what it is, we can test for it, boom, Bob's your uncle. Chronic fatigue syndrome is literally, it's a syndrome, so it's not actually a disease, right? And these constellation of symptoms, like I said, they vary from person to person, but this destination of CFS can actually be brought up from different roads. Some people come at it post-viral, and of the post-viral family, different viruses may get you there, including now with post-COVID. Then you have some people coming to their diagnosis of chronic fatigue syndrome because of injury or accident that they never quite got better from. Surgery, sometimes that can happen. Others would be a very, very stressful life event or period of time, and they fell down after and they just couldn't get back up. I mean, there are so many ways to get to CFS, which is why it's not actually a disease, it's a syndrome.
What's the difference between a syndrome and a disease?
So a disease actually has a process that we know of, right? Like
Uh,
I said, with type 2 diabetes, for
yeah.
example, whereas a syndrome is a group of symptoms which consistently occur together, or a condition like CFS, which is characterized by a set of associated symptoms.
Gotcha.
So it's different. It's not actually a disease. Like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. It's not a disease. Inflammatory bowel disease is a disease. It's not a syndrome. So the different things that people can experience, as you mentioned some of them, of course, fatigue is the main one.
Yeah.
But then there's also that brain stuff. So problems with memory, concentration, you have to read something over and over again, word finding difficulties. Some people, it does express as if you have a persistent viral infection, but it's not an infection, it's inflammation. Again, two separate things that you kind of need to know the difference about. Infection is where you have a pathogen, and a pathogen is like a parasite, bacterial, virus, for example, that is in the throes of essentially attacking or doing damage, and your immune system is actively fighting against that pathogen. That's an infection. Now, most infections will have inflammation. Inflammation is, like if you cut yourself, there's redness, there's swelling, there's a bit of heat, there might be a bit of itching. Inflammation is your body's first line of defense, basically, against what it believes to be a threat. So it can be pathogens, but it can also be dust mites, pollen, or even just the perception of threat by your brain can bring on inflammation. Now, I point to my arm because I was using this as an example, but you can have inflammation, nasopharynx, in your guts, wherever. And because of that inflammation that can be brought on, some CFS patients feel like they're constantly getting sick. Their immune system is shot. They're catching everything that's going around. And in our program, you and me, a lot of the time I'm trying to sort of tease it apart, whereby it may not necessarily be an infection. It may be inflammation. And inflammation will include those symptoms like sore throats and even enlarged lymph nodes, because your immune system is looking for an enemy and it's constantly like sampling the environment, taking it back to the lymph nodes to present it to other cells, immune cells, to say, have you seen this before? Because if it is a part of a virus that it's presenting, right, your immune cells will go, oh, I haven't seen that before. Let me go make some antibodies. And that's how that cycle works.